Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the You Are a Severance podcast. I am Callie Thomas, and I am here with Rodnesha Green, my lovely co-host, who is gesticulating in ways she doesn't understand right now.
It's delirious. Very, very delirious.
She's very tired. This will be an interesting episode. We're here to talk about Season 2, Episode 7, Chikhai Bardo.
Chikhai.
Get ready.
That's what I thought when I first saw the title. I was like, I don't know what this means. I didn't know what it meant, and I didn't know how to pronounce it.
Yeah, I didn't know what it meant either. So let's start off with talking about what it is.
I think that's a great place to start.
The term comes from Buddhism, and it is one of the 6, phases of life. I guess I should have looked better as to what the overall umbrella term for this is, and I realized I didn't copy and paste it into our notes. Anyway, there are 6 of these phases, yes. And this is the 4th of the 6. It's the first of the dying phase. I won't attempt to say all of the names because I know I will butcher them, so I'm just going to give you the English translation. So the first phase is the Bardo of birth and life.
Okay.
And then we have the Bardo of dreaming, which is a subset of the first Bardo. And this Bardo is when you are asleep and dreaming, and it's a stage, I guess, to practice Buddhism, like within your dream state. I don't know if I've got this right, guys. I hope we don't offend any practiticers of Buddhism.
I was going to say, yeah, if you are Buddhist, clarify if we
butcher it.
Make a misstep. Yeah.
So the third stage is the Bardo of meditation. And similarly to the second stage, this is also a subset of the first, and it's experienced when you are in deep practiced meditation. And so the fourth one, Chikhai Bardo, for which the episode is named, begins with the dying process. Specifically, hold on, this is from Wikipedia. I feel like somebody wrote this and got a little prosy with their wordage.
Ruh-roh. Would you like to hear from I guess this is from a Tibetan Buddhist site, what they say it is?
Okay, go for it.
It says that the Chikhai Bardo is the after-death state described in the Bardo to Doi, which is the Tibetan Book of the Dead, wherein the consciousness of the dead person fully enters into the light of the Dharmakaya or truth body. This is a state of non-duality. In this state, the person temporarily experiences for the first time the state of awareness without a second. That is to say, a state of pure consciousness.
Got it. So in the episode, Gemma says it's the death of the ego on that Chikhai Bardo card. And I don't know if she's getting that from knowledge of Chikhai Bardo, or if that's just what she's taking from the picture, because she says the man is fighting himself. But it's interesting that the definition you just read said it's like an absence of duality, which clearly is like the theme of the whole show, right?
This whole
there
thing.
Is no moment where there's an absence of duality. And maybe because this is the beginning of the dying phases, there's 2 other phases after this that have to do with death. And Mark is at the beginning of his reintegration journey. That kind of symbolizes that he is striving for a point of the absence of duality, right? He's trying to get back to one.
Right. I wonder if, because I'm reading down further on this website, I wonder if phase 2 of the Chikhai Bardo, because apparently there's 3 phases of that Bardo, it says that phase 2 is the dissolution of the elements of the psyche. And it says during phase 2, the element of earth sinks into water. Water can no longer be sustained. And then water sinks into fire, which dries out speech, and fire sinks into air, and it dissipates the heat of the body. And then the element of wind sinks into either, which holds the mind substance. Lastly, the outer breath and inner breath consume one another. When the last elements and their interconnected properties are dissolved, pure awareness remains and is freed from all attachments to the material world. So maybe that's what she meant.
Yeah.
Like they're fighting each other, but ultimately it'll just nullify.
Right. And that is, what is happening to Mark in this reintegration process.
True.
So I'd be curious to know who and how, and how did this title selection come about, and what knowledge does that person
I can only imagine maybe somebody in the writer's room is Buddhist or has practiced or studied it or something, because I don't think anyone would be aware otherwise, unless maybe you've just done like Eastern studies.
Right.
or something like that. Brain, you got to help me out today, please.
Prepare for a whole lot
I'm
of
so
that,
sorry.
folks. But I do just want to say the last two, just to wrap it up. The fifth Bardo, Bardo of reality or luminosity, begins after the final inner breath. Visions and auditory phenomena occur. Teachings spontaneously come to you while you're in these phase. So it's like the beginning of enlightenment.
Okay.
The last one is the Bardo of becoming or rebirth. So when the consciousness takes on a mental body, the stage endures until the inner breath commences in the new transmigrating form determined by the karmic seeds within our consciousness. I'm laughing because I clearly just copied this without reading it fully.
It's a jumping off point. I guess it's just at least gets us into the framework and the mindset of this episode.
Right. And I think even though the rest of it was maybe a bit jumbled, the Chikhai Bardo part is the most important part because that is the title of the episode. And I think we managed to connect it.
I think so.
I think we managed to connect it. Okay. Let's get into it. Let's hear that summary.
All right, guys. So in this week's episode, we enter into a journey of life, death, liberty, captivity, memory, reality, love, and loss. The story narrows in to feature Mark and Gemma as they journey between the present and the past. And while we finally get a peek at what's going on this testing floor, it only leads to more questions as to what might be Lumon's endgame.
Our cast this week. Deachin Lockman joins us in this episode. We finally get more than 0.52 seconds of her.
Boy, do we.
And then our guest stars are Robbie Benson, the man from the hall, now has a name, Dr. Maurer. Dari Olafson as Mr. Drummond, Sandra Bernhard as the nurse, Karen Aldridge as Asal Ragabi, and co-stars Eric J. Carlson as Mark Watcher. And this episode is written by Dan Erickson and Mark Friedman and directed by the cinematographer for the show, Jessica Lee Gagne. Oh my gosh, what a directorial debut. My God.
It's quite the showcase of her cinematic talents and perspective, honestly. It was kind of interesting to see just even the choice to make the flashbacks film.
Yes.
And the, current present day stuff digital, just so you can kind of get that memory haziness without doing that, that kind of dated Vaseline on the lens type vibe, but you can get a visual contrast between the two.
Yeah.
She does a lot of fun stuff. We'll talk about it all when we get to it. So are we ready to get to it?
Let's do it.
Let's just jump in, guys. This is all we can do. This is like jumping into the deep end of the pool, a very cold pool, and you've been in the hot, hot sun. You just got to get in there. So let's get in there. All right. We open on the back of a long-haired woman walking through an open campus courtyard, and we find that it is Gemma, real Gemma. She takes a seat next to Mark Scout at a blood drive inside the Gans College Library, and Mark a little bit awkwardly strikes up a conversation about the papers they're grading and what they're doing. And this leads to a nice little meet cute. It's complete with an awkward handshake because, he's getting his blood drawn out of his dominant hand, so he's got to shake with the left, but it's adorable how they come together. So you can see the blossoming of this love. The scene ends with a shot of the Lumon branded medical supplies that are being used to collect the donations. So we already know we're in trouble. We cut to Gemma, who's getting another blood draw, but this time it's present day, and she's in a sterile white room dressed in fitted green scrubs. A nurse who is drawing her blood sees her kind of dazed, and she asks Gemma, "Where did you go?" Gemma kind of checks back in and just smiles subtly. And then we get a flash that takes us to Gemma and Mark cuddling in bed, sharing a very tender post-coital moment. Actually, we don't know if it's post-coital. Maybe they're just lying in bed naked. Who knows? We get a close-up on Mark's eyes, and that jolts us back to the present, but we're now from Mark's POV. So we're jumping right back into where we left Mark, which is post-seizure. And Ragabi is checking his pupils with a flashlight. Devin is still confused about what's happening to her brother, who Ragabi is, what is going on, and she asks if Mark is okay and whether they need to call an ambulance or not. Ragabi assures her that Mark will be fine. He just needs to sleep. But when Devin presses, Ragabi finally reveals the bombshell. Mark is reintegrating and Gemma is alive. And that's our cold open.
Ooh. Yeah, that was such a gut punch to Devin, right? she like literally folded over.
Right. And for someone who's so fiercely protective too,
Hmm.
she literally had the wind knocked out of her by that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Well, let's go back up top. What say you, Callie? How are we feeling about this little meet cute that we get?
Oh my God, it's so cute. And it's so funny because all of the internet is like, where have they been hiding hot Adam Scott? We know how he caught Gemma. It's so funny, just a little bit of facial hair and a better haircut, but also, the light back in his eyes, right? It's a testament to how well he's been playing depressed,
Hmm.
alcoholic Mark, right? Because before this, the happy guy,
He's a little cutie
he could get
pie.
it,
This,
right?
this
So,
is the Mark slash Adam Scott that I know that
right.
took me away in Parks and Rec and Party
Yes.
Down and all those fun little things. So yeah, you make a very good point about how just getting the light back in your eyes and having
Hmm.
that kind of emboldened spirit can change your demeanor entirely.
Yeah.
It really did. And even Gemma, like we've only seen Miss Casey version.
Yes.
We've seen
Yeah.
photos and stuff like that. So we had to kind of imagine what she might have been like
Right.
according to Mark. And now we actually get to see it. And it's like, oh yeah, yeah, I get why he's just like
Yeah.
crazy about this girl.
Yeah. You're like, oh, she's lovely.
She's lovely. She's attractive. She's smart.
Hmm.
She's clearly very grounded and
Yeah.
connected and caring. And none of those things had to be overly indicated. It's all just kind of picked up in these little moments and little things that she does or ways that she does them.
Yeah.
So very subtle touches.
But more pressing in this meet cute scene.
Yeah, I know. I know.
So did they select Gemma from this blood tribe?
This is what I've been trying to figure out. I'm like, how far back does this go?
Hmm.
Did they lure her to the blood drive? Was it even prior to the blood drive? Was it once they collected
Yeah.
a sample from her and was like, she seems like a good candidate because of XYZ? I don't
Yes.
know.
So yeah. So at this point, I was just thinking this as a starting point. I was like, did they select her because of her blood, her DNA, something, were they screening just anybody who came to GANs? Were they specifically looking for intellectuals, academic types? Is that why they set it up there? But then, getting a little ahead of myself later on, when we see more involvement in her life, I was like, oh, well, mate, did it start back further? And was
Mm,
that, they already had selected her for some other reason, had already been watching her, and this was just a way to get more
yeah.
information about her? I don't know.
It's wild to see it all, even just in this opening scene. It's like, oh crap, even here, they had their hooks in these two. Even here,
Yes.
they didn't get not one, they didn't even get to start their lives together without Lumen having interference. That sucks. Like,
Yeah. And it almost is like, did they push them together?
facilitate. Yeah, I've thought that too.
Hmm.
And we're not going to get a clear answer, but one can speculate because again, Lumen just seems like this all powerful entity that's omnipresent everywhere.
Hmm.
But yeah.
Yeah.
So jumping down a little bit, was there anything else you wanted to address in? Okay.
Mm-mm. No. So Devin,
Jumping down a bit, yeah, to Devin and Regabi.
my thought was just like, I wonder what Devin told Rickon and what that conversation was and what her cover was, or if she had a cover or what, because she hasn't been telling Rickon about what they've been doing,
Mm,
trying to figure out if Gemma is alive or if Gemma is who any Mark was talking about. So I was like, what did she tell Rickon? Because she's definitely not going home to him and her baby right now.
true.
She's not leaving his side.
I mean, she did come over already aware that he had been sick and not feeling well. So maybe she just called him and said, hey, I got over here.
Mhm.
Mark's really not looking too good. I'm going to kind of hang out and make sure he's all right since I don't know. That feels like the easiest
Mhm.
get out, although there was no way of knowing how long that process was going to take. So I don't know how
Exactly.
she would have kept covering more than like a day or what have
Exactly.
you. But that's the only thing I can think is maybe she was just hoping, okay, don't take too long because I don't know how I'm going to explain this to my
Yeah.
husband. But yeah, it would have been interesting to see that conversation just to see how Rickon would have reacted.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm good on cold open.
Yeah, moving on. We then go back to Gemma's exam in the sterile right room, and it continues complete with a temperature check, her blood pressure being read, a weigh-in. And then she is provided with two like oddly shaped oblong palm-shaped objects, which she holds in each hand while being questioned. And she's asked, have you eaten today? Yes. Done your reading? 50 pages. Calisthenics? Yes. And then she's asked, if you were caught in a mudslide, would you be more afraid of suffocating or drowning? Gemma thinks about this for a second and then says drowning. So while she's being asked these questions, the nurse is calibrating the machine that is monitoring the readings from the first three questions, but her real focus is the answer to the fourth question. And whatever it is that device is tracking, her response seems to pass the test and the checkup is complete. So Gemma then asks the nurse how many rooms today, and she tells her 6. And Gemma then gets up and goes to a closet and opens it to reveal an outfit. But you get the sense right away that it's not just an outfit. It seems to be a whole persona, and there is a wig included. And Gemma clearly doesn't like that she has to put on this persona today. So then she gets all dressed and she moves through what appears to be her living quarters, and she joins the nurse in the hallway. This space is unmistakably Lumon. If you had any question about where this was taking place up until this point, I think the hallway confirms it, but it's not like the hallways that we have seen before. So these hallways have inlets with doors leading to individual rooms, we think, and then each is labeled with a name and featuring a hand-shaped reader beside it. These rooms clearly require more than just a key card to access them. So as we walk to Gemma's destination, we see the following room names. We see Allentown, Cairns, Dreamsville, Sienna, Loveland, among the ones that are clear enough to read. They arrive at the Wellington room, and the nurse places her hand on the reader, and a needle pops down and pricks the tip of her middle finger. So these rooms require DNA access, okay? And Gemma enters, and we get the familiar elevator ding, and her chip switches. But something's off. We can immediately tell that this Skinny is not Miss Casey. This is somebody else. So as she fully enters, we see that she's in a dentist's office and she is clearly terrified. The mysterious man who picked up the dental supplies from O&D in episode 5 is the dentist, which, by the way, I know we know his name, but I have in the notes referred to him as the dentist until we get his name, because we don't learn his name until damn near the end of this episode. So Gemma asks if she can get a break, but the dentist informs her that it's been 6 weeks since her last visit, and she's confused because in her mind, she was just there. And he cracks a joke about how people fear the dentist and how he should have been an accountant instead. And then he gestures for her to sit, and reluctantly she does. And as she waits for him to begin the exam, she tears up because she knows what's happening next. And then we cut to Gemma exiting the room, and she's like stretching and rubbing her jaw. And she asks the nurse how long she was in there. And she tells her it's been 2 hours. And then they start walking through the hallways again. And as they turn one corner, Gemma pauses briefly at something that she sees ahead. And then we follow her line of sight to see the room labeled Cold Harbor.
All right. Well, I keep wanting to get ahead of myself, but we'll go step by step. Okay. So we've got the top of this exam situation happening. So first thing I noted was, why do we have a goat chart next to the eye chart?
The eye chart. Yeah.
What is the goat chart for? Is it the same essential thing, or is this for something else? Is this for a baby to do?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen goats before, but I have seen eye exams that are different shapes, and there's like different directions. They're facing different directions, right? So if you can tell that the thing is upside down or to the left or to the right, it's kind of similar to asking about what letters. So the goat, I guess, is just Lumon themed that.
But do they use those for people who don't know letters, right? Because the eye chart would indicate, obviously, you know, an alphabet, but if you got a goat chart, was there a point, I guess, at which she did not know words or letters when she came?
Well, or maybe it's like preemptive, like preparing for if they F up something in all of this testing and she loses that ability.
Oh my God.
You know what I mean?
That's terrible.
Maybe.
I'm hoping it's the former and not the latter, because that would be really messed up. Did you notice in the images that I added what our little device is?
No, I didn't know what it was called. So I was like, what is she holding? What are they looking for? What are these readings that are coming from her palms?
Yeah. So I noticed in one of the shots, I got a freeze frame of it, that it's a woe meter. So we're clearly measuring, I guess, the woe temper to some degree, how it's manifesting in her. And then and then one of the things that I noticed,
a whole reader.
Of course they did, because they're weird. Because at first I thought it was some type of lie detector. I was like, it's giving that vibe.
Yeah.
And then of course I just kept looking at stuff and evaluating. And then I was like, oh, it says woe meter on here. And then I noticed that it also had like a WOR-R and WO-L. So that made me wonder, are they measuring different hemispheres of the brain, left brain, right brain?
Oh, I didn't even notice that. I just was like, this one's the one on her on in her left hand, and this one's the one in her right hand. I didn't even realize that.
The only reason I thought that was because when she asked her the question about the drowning or suffocating, and that popped up on the left side, and that made me think, oh, maybe that's the part of her brain that is her true self. Maybe the right side is all of the luminy,
The
weird,
Indian.
severed people sides, trying to judge
Yeah,
where it's happening there. I don't know. This is all
maybe.
conjecture and guessing, but it also shot up to like 1200 when she answered drowning. So it was like
Mm.
peak at the peak of whatever this is measuring.
Yeah, so yeah, maybe she's not really caring what the reading is, just that they're not the same. If this is more testing of the severance chip, and as you proposed, one is like the severed side, the innie
Right.
side, and one is the outie side. Maybe they're just looking that the reaction is not the same.
Yeah, because those first few questions definitely felt like calibrating questions. And she was still
Yeah,
adjusting knobs and
yeah,
things
she
while she was
was.
asking
Yeah.
those. And then they showed the right side, but it looked like it was still trying to level out when she was asking because it was going in between like the
Mm.
middle of the dial. So I couldn't tell if her answer giving a 1200 reading was a good thing or a bad thing. Like good in that it's very definitive,
Yeah.
but I was like, do they want her to be so clear on that answer or do they want her less clear on that answer? Don't
Well,
know.
that's why I'm wondering if it doesn't matter.
Some reason I think it does matter, but I just don't know
Why?
yeah. I
Yeah.
don't know what it's
What
telling
is the
them.
goal, right?
Yeah. And obviously the question speaks to Gemma's car accident incident, right? Because we know, at
Hmm.
least based on all of the kind of illusionary imaging we've seen, that supposedly she drowned in the car accident.
Yeah.
So this is where I wonder, are they checking her memory of it? Are they checking her reaction to it? Do they want her to have
Yeah.
deep woe for this thing? And maybe that's a good thing
Hmm.
that it's at 1200 because it's like, yes, whoa, whoa, it still resonates with you that hard. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. The fact that you found that this is called the woe meter makes me wonder if is there a malice meter and a
And a
frolic
frolic
meter?
meter and I
Yeah.
don't know. That's a
I
great
wonder.
question. But clearly, woe ties very deeply to Gemma, to Mark, because as I
Hmm.
inferred, if the MDR team does represent different tempers, and Mark is the woe temper, so
Definitely.
that this temper is clearly very deeply connected to these two
Yeah.
for whatever reason, be it they've pushed them into that or it was already kind of embedded in their DNA. I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, so that was just a fun little catch. I was like, ooh, okay, woe meter. It was really fun to see that this was Sandra Bernhard. As soon as they showed her, I was like,
Yes.
hey, I haven't
Hey,
seen
yeah,
you
I
in a
said
minute.
that's exactly what I said. I was like, oh, I ain't seen her in a while. Hey, girl.
I hate that you're playing like this part because it makes you
Right.
the enemy, but
Yeah.
what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
It's a gig.
It's interesting to see her in this role because she's typically like a
Happy go lucky. Yeah.
crazy stand up
Yeah.
front next door. Yeah.
She's typically like the Helly, the pushback, the
Yeah.
sardonic catty. I do what I want, I say what I want. And this was a
Yeah.
very subdued part for her.
Yeah.
So fun to see her play a little opposite her type or how she's
Hmm.
typed typically.
Hmm.
Okay, two things.
So,
This one is just a statement. Thank you, Severance, for ruining Robbie Benson for me. If anybody knows who Robbie Benson is or was prior to this show, Robbie Benson was the voice of the Beast,
the Beast.
iconically the voice
Hmm.
of the Beast from Beauty and the Beast. And if
Yeah.
anybody knows me, they know that Beauty and the Beast is like at one point, it was my top favorite movie. And sometimes it still
Yeah.
goes back and forth between 1 and 2 spot. But I loved that movie. I loved his voice. I loved what he brought to it. And now
He's got a great
now
voice.
I hear that voice and I see this creepy man and I hate it.
Childhood ruined.
Ruined. Jeez.
My other thing for this section was so obviously we recognize these names right away as the files that are being worked on. So
Mm-hmm.
are MDR's files just about creating testing scenarios for Gemma where whatever it is they are creating scenarios to bring about or study the specific temper and she's experiencing these. But then I'm like, that can't be the only thing, because
Yeah.
that then completely contrasts with what we have learned in the Lexington letter, where the Lexington letter very much implied that what they were working on is much more external.
Right. Right.
Right? Like potentially they're blowing up things, or, so I'm confused by these rooms.
I don't know if they're creating conditions. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if they're maybe controlling the temperament of the any in that room, how they
Mm-hmm.
respond.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's also wild that Allentown, which we later see as the Christmas room, right?
Yeah, that's the Christmas room.
That's the one that Mark got the award for. So
Mm-hmm.
what the heck does that mean? What does that
He
mean?
did so well. I don't know. Yeah.
Clearly it must have
Mm-hmm.
been something significant enough. Like this room must have
Yeah.
enough weight of importance to whatever they're doing down there with her that it warranted an award. So I don't know.
Yeah. Crazy. But
Okay.
let's keep it moving. All
Yeah.
right.
Oh, that sounded like the Pillsbury Doughboy. Sorry. I didn't mean it to sound like that. Okay.
Woo-hoo.
Back at Mark's house, Devin anxiously talks to a comatose Mark, willing him to come back. She needs her brother. His eye begins to twitch as Devin begins to lean closer in, hoping that it's a sign that he might be waking. We're then taken inside of Mark's dream state, where he's arriving in an elevator. Don't worry, this is just a normal elevator, and it's a
Mhm.
normal Mark. And he's riding up to the floor where Gemma works at Gans College. So Mark excitedly walks into Gemma's office, and he puts down an item, and she's fervently preparing for a lecture, and he's just trying to have, like, that cute little post date talk, like, last night was fun, I had a good time. She's like, I did too, I gotta get to this lecture. And Mark's like, well, I brought you a gift, an ant farm. And she's just like, why would you bring me that? And he's like, because you like ants. And so she's like, I said I like plants. And so they have this cute little back and forth about this verbal misunderstanding. It leads to them kissing in the office. And then that kiss merges into another kiss at the home that they clearly now share. We also see that they have wedding bands on their fingers. So this is post-marriage Mark and Gemma.
Mm-hmm.
So she pulls away from him, and we see that he's working in their study. She's kissing on him and trying to be cutesy. Mark's like, I gotta work, I gotta work. And then all of a sudden we see her gaze pull up. And in Russian, she says, what's that? And we notice that there is a crib off in the corner, still in box. But Mark has bought this crib because clearly they are ready to move to the next phase of their relationship, which is to start a family. So she goes over, she's very excited to see it. They have a fun little back and forth about who's going to build it. And we see that happiness spill over into a very heartfelt montage of their life together. And it is set to, I knew I was going to end up with this section. I can't say this, I don't know French. It is set to the music of Les Valses à Mille Tempo.
La valse à mille temps.
Yep, that.
It's the waltz. The waltz a thousand times.
Okay, The Waltz of a Thousand Times by Jacques Brel, or maybe it's Brel. I don't know French. This montage takes us to a dinner where we get to see this foursome finally. Gemma, Mark, Devin, and Rickon are all having a meal together at Mark and Gemma's house. Devin recounts a recent hiking trip where her and Rickon were scaling these very steep cliffs. Clearly, Devin struggled more than Rickon did, and they're discussing it, having a fun, lighthearted, joyful conversation. Mark and Rickon's dynamic is like nothing we've ever seen. They seem to be enjoying each other's company. It's a good time. And then we kind of close into Devin and Gemma, and Devin's about to offer Gemma some wine, and she just gently places her hand over the lip of her cup. And we see Devin kind of give her a look like, you're not drinking? And Gemma just kind of gives her a look like, nah, girl, I'm not drinking. And we all get the cues. Clearly, Devin is about to be an aunt, and she's very excited for her. And they just keep this subtle little moment between the two of them. It is short-lived, guys, because then we close in on Gemma's eyes, and that takes us from this joyous gathering to a tragedy in her bathroom. We see her just kind of laboring in pain, and we're all able to probably surmise that, unfortunately, she's having a miscarriage, and we now know that she has lost the baby. She stumbles into the shower, and she's just crying. Mark calls up to her and then finds her huddled down in the corner, sees her face, knows what happens, and just holds her close. It's really quite sad. So this is just a random question, but not so random of a question. I didn't expect there to be as much French influence and French inspired things in their little like hovel, right? Because we know
Yeah.
she's a Russian literature professor.
Hmm.
We know that Mark is just generally like a history teacher. I don't think it's specific to any like, or is it European history? No, it's
No, I think it's
just history,
history
right?
or worlds, maybe.
Right. So I just wasn't expecting them to be such Francophiles, right? We've got
Yeah.
art on the wall. We've got
Yeah.
the music is all in French. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I didn't
It's
know.
very lovey-dovey.
It is very lovey-dovey. Any particulars that stood out to you in this moment?
Just that overall, and I think, like we said, this kind of cycles us back to the cinematography and the choice to do film and everything, and just the direction choices here. It beautifully gives us their like full backstory. Like there's a fullness to it,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't feel rushed, even though we know timeline wise it is rushed. It has to be rushed to fit in.
Yeah.
It jumps forward at the right moments, and it gives us the, the like signposts in their timeline very well without being like, okay, we have to tell you this and we have to tell you this and we have to tell you this.
Right.
It's just so well done. It's just, this episode is so good.
It
And
is.
the flashback moments particularly are so beautiful, and it's a lovely bittersweet story. They're
I
best.
also like the choice in how she's doing this montage to be a little like jolty. Like it's
Yeah.
not like these fluid moments that just seamlessly
No.
weave into each other. Like some of them do, and then some of them just kind of like skirt jump cut to this, and some
Yeah.
of it's like skirt, like scenes jumping on top of each other. And I feel like that, again, from a cinematography language, communicates how memory sometimes works more
Yeah.
accurately than these like little seamless transitions. It's like you have these moments, and
Yeah.
then another moment kind of jumps in there, or these moments all kind of blur together because it just kind of generally symbolizes a feeling of our day to day or our
Yes.
life together or what have you.
And I think it's also jolty like that because I my interpretation was that we're simultaneously getting this from Mark journeying in his coma,
Mm-hmm.
and also Gemma longing to
Yeah,
return to this on the testing floor, and we're seeing
those
like
collide.
it's
Yeah,
almost like it's they have a shared dream state, like, in bringing this backstory to us. So it's
yeah.
kind of like rambly and jumpy in that way for that
Mm-hmm.
reason too.
Agree. I think that is part of it. One of the things that I noted just in the little montage part, because I was trying to just see what all the little scenes and moments were. They happen fast. You know how they do on this show. It's like,
Yes.
can you catch it? So, well, the first thing that I noticed, and this was back when Gemma was talking about her lecture, and then it comes up again when she's reading in this little montage, the Hajid Murad. And I was like, what is
Hmm.
that? And so I
That,
had to
yeah.
look it up. It is a Russian novel, another Leo Tolstoy novel, and it has to do with a Northern Caucasian Muslim leader who, this was when I guess that region or that area was trying to be infiltrated by Russia. And I think it says that the theme of the novel is struggle while remaining faithful. And this is what kind of resonated throughout. And it also kind of echoed what Tolstoy was going through. I guess he wrote this in his latter years as he was approaching his death. In addition to the theme of resistance, determinism is a major theme as well. So I think that was essentially what I was getting at. And so, really, why that mattered to me to figure that out is I feel like this seems like a book that Jim is very familiar with.
Hmm.
She's lecturing on it. She's reading it again in her own free time, it seems like, because that lecture was early on in her and Mark's relationship. She talked about how she was about
Yeah.
to do that. And now she's just kind of reading it in her free time. So I think these are themes that live and resonate deep within her.
Hmm.
So then when we see later what happens, that was what jumped me back to this was like, oh, this feels like one of those little echoes, right? That's like something
Yeah.
has connected deep within me. I resonate with the themes of this work. And it kind of, again, speaks to the importance of like literature and novels and the influence of authors and their writings on creating resistance, creating
Hmm.
a willing spirit to determine themselves through difficult situations or enslavement
Yeah.
or what have you. So I just wanted to point that out, that was a fun little nod in there. You also get a little bit
Hmm.
of it from that poster that's hanging
Yeah.
behind Mark's head, which again is in French. And I noticed immediately that it looked like a propaganda type of
It's
poster.
war propaganda, yeah.
Exactly. And it's from World War I. And then I wanted to get what the translation on it says. So it says, for the last quarter hour, help me. So I guess it's like a call to arms type of thing. Now that I'm looking at it, it is giving that vibe of that Kier poster we saw earlier too, of like the people in the
Coming on the
blue.
hill and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the soldiers come in and yeah.
So it is almost like an inverse of we saw in that propaganda poster. The other thing that I noticed were all the flowers. And we know that Gemma likes plants, and she stated as much in this episode. But the plant that I kept noticing pop up the most were lilies. So I saw a lot of different lily plants. I was trying to figure out that tree that her and Mark are kind of like having their little tee-hee-hee out in the garden area. I was like, what type of flower is on that? And I couldn't tell if it was a magnolia or a lily. I was like, it looks very like long and floppy for a lily. When I looked it up, it looked like it was a Japanese magnolia. And then there was the red flower that kind of kept popping up. And then that's when you started seeing Gemma dressed in red. And that looked like it could be a red beauty lily or a red trumpet lily. Couldn't tell which. Don't know. They might even be the same. Don't know. But that lily popped up as we got closer to her announcing her pregnancy too. And supposedly red lilies signify like romance and love. And so it's kind of symbolic of their love creating. And I generally wanted to know what lilies and magnolias symbolize. And so it says that lilies symbolize purity, rebirth, love, and hope. As I said, red lilies represent love and passion. Pink lilies, which I saw also woven in, represent femininity, love, and admiration. But the rebirth thing I thought was kind of interesting. And then magnolias symbolize many things, including nobility, purity, and everlasting connections. So they said because magnolia trees tend to like be sustained for long periods of time, they tend to just kind of grow deep and like always stick around through many different weather types, etc. That's why they symbolize everlasting connection. So again, these are two things that I feel like are kind of pointing to these two characters, and that there's just something that keeps them tethered to one another despite everything that's happening. Or maybe I'm reading too much into it. Who knows?
I mean, also, this is the only time in the show where we see like springtime and flowers. The rest is just like perpetual snowy winter.
You're right. We've been in perpetual winter.
So again, it's just more of like, this is the happy time.
It's like Chronicles of Narnia. Always winter, never Christmas. Sad. Those were just the little notes that I got through that montage. Thought that was cute. And that's all I got.
If anyone is wondering what the song is about, just by the way,
I am me.
It's just it's one of those repetitive songs, but the repetition, the piece that's in the section of the song that is in this part is I dance the waltz with you 100 times, find your love, blah blah blah, love you. I dance 1,000 times, love you, dancing to 1,000,000 times. The amount of times grows across the whole song, and then it talks about like finding your love over and over again. So we loved when we were this year old, we loved when we were this age, we loved when we were this age, and we waltz and blah blah blah.
Okay.
Blah. Yeah, so we love it.
It all connects. You see, it all connects, you guys. Basically, what we're getting at through this whole little montage is they is like this. You guys can't see me who are listening, but my fingers are very interwoven.
Yeah, like you said, it echoes the whole Magnolia thing about like being deep rooted and lasting forever.
No matter what you try to do, Lumon,
yeah,
suck.
yeah.
Side note, I didn't know what Chomolungma was when they said it during the dinner conversation.
Oh,
it's Mount Everest, but like by its, I don't want to say its proper name because apparently there are 3 different names for Mount Everest, but by its Tibetan name is Chomolungma.
Got it. Speaking of the dinner party,
yes,
it was so interesting to see Mark not hating Rickon.
I was waiting for him to say something snarky just to be like, maybe there was always a little bit of snark, but really there wasn't.
Well, yeah, and I was going to say because it directly challenged my assessment of their relationship pre Gemma's death during our the UUR bonus episode available on Patreon. Where I was saying that I think Mark was perhaps nicer pre-Gemma, but I don't think they were like true friends. But this little snippet, like I think Mark is really endeared by Rickon's quirkiness. And I don't think they're the best of friends. Right. I definitely think their relationship is far better than what I assumed it was.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those like, you're my sister's partner, so I'm going to, come to know you and appreciate you because this is my sister's person. But it was nice. It was very cute to see them all together in their little veranda dinner table set.
Yeah.
Where is this house? Where are they? This doesn't feel like the same place unless it's just so different because of the climate change, but it really does feel like somewhere in Europe, in France. I know that's not where
Yeah.
they are, but
Right.
they're clearly in a very remote location. It doesn't seem like they have a lot of they're not in a neighborhood. It's a complete contrast to where Mark lives now.
It feels like it's similar to how like Rick and Devon's place is like it's wooded around and there's open space before you get to the
Mm-hmm.
next person. You know,
Mm.
their neighbors aren't right up on top of them.
Do you think they maybe lived closer to Rick and Devon?
Yeah, did we ever figure out what city
We did
Rick and
not.
Devon live in? We know they're outside of Kier too. So is this, yeah, maybe it all was Gans. Maybe they did live closer to each other.
It makes sense.
Yeah. My last thing about this dinner was just like, oh, Devon's reaction to Gemma was so bittersweet to watch because like you're happy, like a birth announcement is happy. This wasn't an official announcement, but like you could see her trying to contain her joy at like, okay, and then she like pours herself. But we already know what's gonna happen, so it
I
was like,
know.
oh, we
I
already
know.
know this doesn't work out.
It's also one of those moments between women, right? Like I've had so many of my friends who they haven't formally announced yet. They haven't
Yeah.
formally said, you were one of them, where it's like,
Uh-huh.
just letting you know, this is happening. Haven't told anybody.
Rodnesha knew before I knew because I was like, yeah, I don't think it took this time. Like this was just, this was just we do it the first time just to get it out of the way because I did IUI.
Mm-hmm.
And Rodnesha was like, okay, like she's not gonna press the subject with me because I'm clearly vulnerable, but she's like, girl, you pregnant.
That was so wild. That whole thing, I still think about. I'm just like, all of that's so crazy. And it's like, it was around my birthday when all of that was happening.
Yeah.
But this is all to say, like, this is a thing I think women kind of know with
Yeah.
each other. Like, you're in this kind of sensitive initial trimester time. You want to be excited, but it's like, I don't want to necessarily like shout from the rooftops what's going on, but
Yeah.
I just want to let somebody know like this is happening. And then you're like happy for them and you want the best for them. And so I could see
Right.
in Devon's face of like, okay,
Oh.
okay, I'm
Yep.
excited for you guys. And that's enough. We can leave it here. And like you
Yeah.
said, to know how it's gonna go sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was a cute moment. I liked seeing how excited they were for one another,
Yeah.
and it points again more to this relationship that Devon has with
Right.
Gemma. That
Yeah.
when we talked about how Mark was kind of being a jerk to her in the restaurant about her wanting
Yeah.
to tell her feelings about it, it's like I had a relationship with this woman too. We had a deep
Right.
connection as well. I'm just as sad, about her loss. So
Yeah.
now we can see
Yes.
the
Yeah,
type of
definitely.
relationship they had. So
Right.
anyway, are we
Yes.
good on this section?
Yes, we are.
Yay.
Okay, so this picks up right after the miscarriage scene. So we zoom out from Mark holding Gemma in the shower, and there's this very interesting moment where the water that has been pouring on them from the shower starts to reverse, right,
Yeah.
back up. And this transitions him to a familiar moment that we have already seen of Mark and Miss Casey in MDR when Miss Casey comes to observe Helly after that incident. And so as he's looking up at her, the room begins to warp and twist, and reality is bending all around us. And we follow a bundle of wires and cords down through the MDR table, and it's snaking through a windy path until we arrive at a dimly lit room. And inside this room are four people sitting at desks similar to MDR, but like the reverse. Their backs are to each other, and their attention is all fixed on monitors, and they are watching our MDR team. So we get a time lapse of Mark's watcher observing him work on all the files that we've seen literally across like the first season till now. And we overhear Mr. Drummond's voice asking, are the severance barriers holding? And then it's revealed that he is speaking to the dentist now, except now he's dressed like a 70s PE teacher. And he replies, yes, the technology is working. Mr. Drummond then asks if he's fond of Gemma, and he confirms that, yeah, he is, but he thinks the feeling is mutual. And Mr. Drummond raises an eyebrow and says, didn't she try and break your fingers? And then we see on the monitor, Gemma is now dressed in workout gear that matches the man's 1970s retro attire, and she is being led to yet another room.
Weirder and creepier this guy gets.
Yeah, he gets creepier and creepier. But my first question was, what the hell is Mr. Drummond's job? Because he just keeps popping up in all these super important places.
As he appears more and more, his role gets more and more complex and more intricate. Because again, we've said this in previous episodes. When he first popped on the scene, it just seemed like he was a body man. Like, oh, I'm here to be a little bit of an enforcer. I'm like James, guy. I just got to make sure everybody stays in check. And then we see him going and doing little excursions beyond Lumon. Then we see him conducting reviews, like performance reviews. What is your job? And now you're up here with this weird secret hovel monitoring. What is your job?
What is your job? And why do they have to report to you on the status of things?
Exactly. I know a lot of people were presuming that Drummond was like the new Grainer, like that he was a security. And I was like, I don't think his role far extends beyond security.
I don't think Grainer had this access.
No, not at all. But clearly this man has been a presence and is just kind of working in other spaces. I don't know. And we haven't gotten a job title from him. Nobody's addressed him in any specific way.
No.
Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah.
I just know he gets scarier and scarier each time I see him. Like I had nowhere near the fear with Grainer that I do with this dude. Each of the rooms that we got to witness, I was again trying to do the thing of like, is this testing a temper? But because they had their 80s attire looking like workout gear, I was like, is this Frolic? Was this the Frolic?
Maybe.
Room? I mean, none of these things are ever as fun as they may seem. So it's probably like being tortured with joy or who knows, like doing a workout video for 8 hours straight.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to say is that regardless of what it is, there's never a stop to it. There's nothing that anybody enjoys that much that they don't need a break from it. Right. So there's never a stop for the innie because that's their only consciousness. So it's all some sort of weird and unusual
pushing it to the limit. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would have been interesting to see, but I probably wouldn't have liked it. So whatever.
Yeah. And we also know that there's far more than 4 rooms. So there, even on just the first day, she goes to 6. So if they are all related to tempers specifically, there's definitely overlap in testing the tempers in different ways.
For sure. So here's a question for you. Why does Drummond not know why actually it comes later in the Christmas episode, but I'll just address it now because we're with Drummond. Why does he not know about the clothing?
So why is he aware of so many other things and he's getting updates, but he doesn't know what's going on inside the room specifically? Maybe there's a reason why he can't know. Also related to maybe there's a reason why it's only always this man and not other people involved.
Do they give Dr. Maurer like free range to create these spaces? Do they just kind of hand it off to him and say, we trust you to like work this out?
See, I don't know because I think the space is dictated by what's happening with the files. So I don't think he has control in creating it. Maybe in his character, I don't know. I think it's more tied to what is being refined. But overall, his growing fondness for Gemma is gross.
Don't like it.
It's creepy. It's creepy. It'll come back up again later, but this is just the first where I'm like, ew.
Yeah, the fact that he's like, she's easy to like. I was like, get out of here.
Yeah, gross.
Stop that.
Yeah.
And if you can't tell the difference between someone who's tolerating you and someone who likes you, sir.
Right. She's trying to not like flip out her captor, bro.
This is not Beauty and the Beast. This is not a Stockholm situation.
Not a Stockholm
She's
situation.
not feeling you, bro.
No, she's not.
Oh my God. Is this paralleling Beauty and the Beast? This whole thing.
He thinks it is.
It's just ruined.
He thinks that's their happy ending on the way.
I trap her here, but I give her nice things and I make her feel sort of comfortable with her imprisonment. And I think she kind of likes me. Oh God, this is why they hired him. Oh, my brain is broken. Oh no.
Beauty and the Beast, ruined.
Tale as old as time.
No.
Ruined by, okay.
Hello, she's singing. We've lost her.
It's true. That's the cue. All right. Anything else, or we want to keep going? All right. Okay. So when Gemma opens the white door, we cut to her and Mark entering a clinic. So it's a nice little seamless transition. And as they check in at the desk, a doctor walks by off to the side, and it's the dentist again. So Gemma and Mark sit down to fill out their paperwork, and we notice that there is a Lumon logo at the top left hand of the page. So Mark is reassuring her that, this is the next step for many people. And Gemma definitely looks more despondent, but she tries to understand and hear where he's coming from.
Mm-hmm.
So an overhead shot of them in the waiting room then cuts to an identical shot of present day Gemma, who is sitting in her Lumon quarters. The camera switches from a smooth and steady shot to one that's jumpy and staccato as it winds out of her room through the white hallways and back to the past, where Mark puts on a sweater in the hallway. Now, the hallway, when we first see it, looks like the weird testing floor hallways,
Mm-hmm.
but it has the furniture clearly from their home. And so when he opens the door, it then takes them into their home in the past. So we hear Gemma call out to him and ask if he's ready. Mark enters the bathroom where she is preparing for their final shot of her fertility. She is nervous, but Mark is hopeful for their future daughter, cute, who is on her way to them. They just need to reach out and grab her. Love that. So we then jump back to present day Gemma, and the dentist man sets up an x-ray in one of the testing rooms, and we see the same man who was monitoring Mark is also monitoring her. The dentist then asks how she is feeling, and she says, "My mouth hurts." And when asked what room made it hurt, she identifies the first room that she went to. He confirms the name of that room, the Wellington room, and she remembers nothing that happened. He's asking her questions. She's like, "I don't know." She knows that she visited 6 rooms that day. That's about it. So then he asks if she felt any specific feelings coming out of the rooms in the hallways. And she dodges this question and instead decides to ask him about the one room that she noticed she's never been in. She said today it had a new name on the door. And he says, Cold Harbor. So she asks, "What happens once I visit all the rooms?" And the man tells her that she will see the world. And she begins to smile and ask, "So I'll see Mark?" And he responds in the typical vague, confusing Lumon prose. And she's not satisfied with this answer, but he leaves her for the night. We then jump back to the past and see a sad Gemma in the bathroom again. And we come to realize that she has experienced yet another failed pregnancy. And she just cries and closes the door. So, fertility clinic. We're at the clinic. I can't believe this guy is there. Do you know when I saw him pass by her, I did that Leo DiCaprio meme where I was like, oh, it's him.
Oh, yeah. I was like, what the heck again? Yeah. So this is the point where I was like, wait a minute. Did they select her from the blood drive or have they been watching her for much longer than that? This seeing him pop up again made me think. And this is also why I question if he's an actual doctor too. Like, doctor, okay, but he's in the clinic, but he just again, it's like, are you popping up at different places? And are you more of like an investigator type person? I don't know.
Great question. I mean, we know that Lumon has their hooks in different places. Maybe he's just feeding information. If it didn't go all the way back to the blood drive, maybe them walking in the fertility clinic and he's assessing candidates based on the little forms they're filling out, like, oh, this might be someone to keep our eyes on. I'm gonna feed this over to
Oh,
Lumon. Maybe,
yeah,
or
I don't
maybe
think
he's
so.
there specifically waiting for them,
Yeah.
potentially. Or is there a possibility that either they could tell by their blood that they probably wouldn't be able to conceive, even though at that point in time they weren't together? I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. If we're going with the theory that they were pushed together, maybe they did know they would end up there already.
Right.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I feel like he's like her personal watcher. Like he's probably popped up in other places too.
Mm. Fun fact. Buttsman Fertility Clinic is the name of this clinic. You want to know what Buttsman is German for?
What?
Boogeyman.
Oh, fun. Yeah. So he ain't no doctor. He the boogeyman. He ain't no real doctor.
I saw that. I was actually just looking it up to see if it was another family name tied to Lumon. Like, oh, is
Yeah.
Buttsman like another group or
Some
family or someone that's a Lumon relative or a Cure relative? And when I saw that, I said, okay, see,
so wait a
really,
minute.
seriously, Boogeyman just hiding in plain sight. Y'all aren't even trying. It's just like, of
Yeah.
course, of course, of course. And again, how much is this is real? How much is staged? Are these people in this clinic actually real people? Are they staged just for them? I don't know anymore. What's
Oh
real and what's
Lord.
not? I don't know. I don't like it. I don't like having to question
Yeah.
reality so much. Um, so she's wearing her necklace that obviously we see in the first season, the one that's in
Hmm.
her little box or whatever. I was trying to
Yeah.
see if it had a specific design or shape or gemstone. I couldn't get close enough to tell quite what it was, but I did notice that her earrings were little flowers. That's it.
Okay. The monitoring, when we get the flash of the Mark Watcher watching Gemma, I was like, oh, so what we thought in the at the end of the first episode was either Mark working on Miss Casey or Miss Casey monitoring Mark was actually
Mm-hmm.
just them both being monitored because
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
the flash is the same exact flash that we got.
That's
Um,
true. That's true.
then, yeah,
So it's their POV, not.
yeah. Which, as I'm saying it, makes me wonder if that is an anchor in time for us. If this, what we're happening, isn't exactly present day. Because I think while as I was watching it, I was assuming it was happening the same time as Mark is in the coma, but I'm wondering if maybe it happened
Mm,
around the same time as Mark returning back to
yeah,
MBR.
yeah. Because one of the screens when they get to the one saying that he's stuck at 96% was at that time of the
Was
nosebleed, and then they
later on.
show and they show his
Yes,
desk empty because he's in the
that's a good
office.
point. That's a good
So
point.
I think
Yeah.
each of those scenes is a specific point in time.
Yeah. So this day that we see is back when our MDR team for that first day they got reunited because that's when we saw this
Ah,
screen of Gemma
yes,
on
you're
Mark's
right.
screen at the
Yes,
end of the
yes, yes.
episode. So
That's
that's an
true.
anchor point there
Okay,
too.
okay.
Nice.
Does this help us in any way?
No, it doesn't because jumping ahead then that then makes me be like, yeah, we don't know what's going on to Gemma right now. We don't know what present day is.
No. Um, I got a little confused at first when we saw all the Watchers, right?
Mm-hmm.
I initially was thinking, oh, are these the shadow people again? But Mark's person is different than the Jepsen guy who had done his shadow being.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a different
Um,
actor.
but that Dylan actor looked very similar to the shadow Dylan, and they didn't give him a casting billing.
No.
So I don't know. What one thing I did notice when I went to IMDb is that the
Yeah.
one
The Irving Watcher
is John
is
Turturro's body double. So it makes me
mhm.
wonder if those guys might be body doubles for the others, and maybe they only
Yeah,
specifically
maybe.
cast Marks. I don't know. But they're clearly a whole different set of people. So I was like, well, there goes that idea. I was like, oh, are the shadow people like robot watchers? They're just other
Oh,
people. I don't
yeah.
know. Don't. I'm just shooting stuff off. So now we're going back to Gemma and the dentist having their little exam time, and
Mhm.
just the detest on Gemma's face. I love the subtlety with which she is like clearly just over this dude, but I can't make it known that I don't care for you. I need to just kind of play the
Yeah.
game because I'm hoping if I cooperate, you guys will just let me go and finish whatever the heck you're doing and let me out of here. But you can just see that she's just seething under the surface. Like, I hate
Yeah.
this guy. I hate this guy. And she probably can tell he's like perving on her too. Like, he's creepy. I don't like you, but I also have to pretend like I like you enough
Mhm.
that you don't push back, right? Oh,
Yeah.
sucks. His line that he said to her, where he was like,
Mark will benefit from the world you're siring.
yes,
That one. Kier
yes,
will take away all his pain just as Kier has taken
taking
away
away
yours.
yours. Which, how, sir?
That was very unsettling because I'm slowly moving more and more towards the idea that the plan after Cold Harbor is not just to let Mark go. I didn't like it. I didn't like it. I love that she was like, "Can you just speak like a normal person?" Like, God dang.
I had a little applause moment, like, thank you.
Yeah,
Yes.
right. Because
Y'all
what
be
the fuck
speaking
does
in
that
riddles and
mean?
I hate it.
Yeah. My overall question was just like, what are they doing, right? So why do we even need Gemma on the testing floor to test Severance and test the chips if we already have so many severed employees? Because, the question earlier of are the severance barriers holding? I'm like, don't y'all already know that works? Like,
That
don't
part.
y'all already know?
That part. Thank you for saying that. Yes. That was a confusing moment for me too, because I was like, is this something different that you guys are trying to figure
Hmm.
out? Because like we know the
Yeah.
severed chip does what the severed chip is supposed to do, but this seems like y'all are testing a different parameter or aspect of it.
Or is the plural piece of it the new part? Like, is the fact that she clearly has multiple innies what's new? And they're trying to see
Mm,
if they
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 all
severance will
are.
hold across multiple different ones, and
That's
they're
very possible. That might be what
making
it is
different
because
personalities.
we've only seen Severance work in a two-part space, right? Any
Hmm.
outie. Clearly with Gemma, they're pushing the brink of that, like with multiple different innies existing in one person. So maybe that is what they mean. Like, is there any bleed over between these different versions, or are they all kind
Yeah.
of like staying in their place? And maybe that's what this aspect of the testing floor is
Yeah, maybe.
about. Maybe they're trying to
And,
see how many different divisions you can create within a severance chip. Maybe.
yeah. And then my other thought related to that was just like, dang, reintegration is not an option for Gemma. Ain't no way. If it's this difficult to reintegrate
Oh,
to
how are you gonna? Oh my God, you're right.
consciousness sis, then ain't no way they can do that for her. Gemma's
I
just gonna have to, if Gemma gets free, she's just gonna have live life knowing that she has gaps in her memory and be content.
I wonder if that's what Cobell means by the happy ending. It's like
Maybe.
she will never be able, she's too divided, too many.
Mhm.
It's the Lord Voldemort complex. We've split ourselves so many different ways.
Mhm.
Can we really be one restored person when we've divided our souls so many different times?
Yeah.
If her consciousness has been split up too much, can you piece all that back together? That's
Right.
horrible.
That is horrible. It's
Mm.
horrible. Gemma's story is so tragic no matter
Yeah.
how this ends. It's
Yeah.
already tragic.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, we have that to look forward to. Yay.
Okay, so now we are back at Mark's house. Devin is sleeping by his side, and she's awoken the next day by Ragabi checking on Mark's vitals. And she's not sure how long Mark is going to sleep. This is where she says he's journeying, which I was like, that's a nice way to say he's in a coma. But she assures Devin that he's going to be all right. We just need to let him sleep. So then Devin inquires about this Innie cabin and begins to describe what she encountered at the birthing retreat. And she wonders if maybe they can take Mark there so that they can ask his Innie some questions. And Ragabi quickly shuts that down and says, she knows exactly where she's talking about. And that's not the same thing at all. It doesn't work that way. So Ragabi is certain that their current path is the only way to get Gemma out. And Devin is not satisfied with this answer at all and says, well, she can just call Harmony Cobell and maybe she can get some answers or some guidance from her. And Ragabi is adamant that this is a mistake. She's like, that is not it. The plan is that we wait until Mark wakes up and we continue with our current process. And Devin quickly reminds her that no, 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 no. Under no circumstances are you making any more decisions about Mark's brain. His brain is under my custody now. No, you don't get to do that. And so as Devin pulls out her phone to start to call Harmony, and Ragabi is visibly frightened, and she immediately packs up her things and she's like, if you're going to call her, I can't be a part of this. Devin tries to stop her. It's like, no, 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 I can't do this without you. What happens when he wakes up? And she's just like, do not call that woman. And she leaves the room. Devin is left contemplating if calling Harmony is the right move. And before she can press that call button, Mark begins to whisper something in his sleep. He's like, chick, 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 chick. This then cuts us back to another flashback. And we see Gemma at the dining room table filling out a survey and looking at the cards that we know from when Dylan found them in O&D in season 1 and Mark asks Chikhai Bardo. And this is where we get that discussion of the possible meaning and the ego and the death of the ego. And she continues to fill out the survey as they're talking about it. So Mark questions her about where it came from. And she says that she thinks she got on a mailing list at the clinic. And he asks her why she's wasting her time with this. And they have a bit of a tiff, back and forth about this that is clearly not actually about her doing the survey. They've been through a rough time. And the argument ends with Mark saying, well, let's stop. And you can feel that this is really a decision. It's a turning point where they are deciding to stop trying for a baby. So,
Okay, so Ragabi, Devin.
yeah.
I saw your note about, you get where Devin's coming from.
Yeah. If we thought Mark didn't have all the information,
Yeah, you're
Devin
right.
doesn't have no information,
You're
right?
right.
So what can she do? I know somebody who knows about severance. Somebody else, I don't have to rely on this lady. Let me call Harmony. I also was like, ooh, it's not the right move. But also, why do you still have Harmony's number? Because if I knew that my lactation specialist was stalking me and my brother, I probably would have blocked her by now.
Yeah. Okay. What should have outweighed what you don't know, in my opinion. So it's like,
Yes. Yeah.
Harmony Cobell ran the severed floor. You know
Yes.
that she was responsible for a
Yes.
lot of what happened to your brother on the severed floor. You
Yes.
know that she was also infiltrating your personal life and interacting with you and your baby under false pretense.
Mm-hmm.
You know that she, had her hands in all this other stuff that was happening with Lumon, with the OTC. So for me, that's enough to be like, this lady gets no presence, no pass in my
Right.
world ever again. So when she pulled out
Right.
that phone and had her number, I, like you, was like, what?
Wait a minute.
Why is that your go-to? Like,
yeah, not only that, still saved as
Mrs.
Selvig.
Selvig. Mm-hmm.
I can't find a reason why I would keep her number, but trust it would be relabeled something else.
I would have her number maybe to sue her, to file litigation against her.
Right?
Exactly.
To have a warning in case you get any future harassment.
That's it. I just, in that moment, I was like, I don't know that I would have made that call. I get Ragabi is
Yeah.
crazy. I get it. And I
Yeah.
get that she does not explain things well. And she's just very black and white about stuff and kind
Yeah.
of not speaks in riddles like Lumon does, but speaks without clarity. So I get the frustration and confusion. I just don't know if I would have made the leap to Selvig.
Not at all.
Maybe I would have used it as a threat, like, tell me what's going on, tell me what's happening, or clarify this for me, or I'm calling this
Yeah.
lady. I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't have even done that because, again, my
Yeah.
unconscious brother, whose life is in the balance, is just laying on my couch, and I don't know what the answer is to fix it.
Yeah.
So I may have just had to default to this lady. I don't know.
Right.
Okay. I didn't have much else where that's concerned.
Well, my other thing just about this part was then Ragabi's reaction
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
felt far larger than just I'm still on the run. I don't want to be found. Like, Mr. Grainer can catch me, whatever. I defended myself. I can hold my own. She killed him, obviously. She killed her own. But Harmony, oh no, 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 no. She's not thinking I can go to bat with this lady. Something is so I'm like, what catalyst event happened to make her leave Lumon? I think I was thinking it was probably over time, just her, starting to feel remorse about what she was doing, about her role in what's going on the severed floor, and over time just building until a break. But this, for some reason, made me feel like there was something very specific that she did that she can get into a lot of trouble for, because her reaction about the prospect of Harmony coming was sheer terror.
Now, on one hand, we do know from the Lexington letter that when Lumon finds people that have been traitors, them people cease to be people.
Yeah. Yeah. They get disappeared.
That exist on this mortal plane. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see if she's just aware enough about Lumon, and especially since she believes Harmony, this is a woman who is sold out for Kier, and I don't put it past her to just turn tail and turn in whoever she needs to get back in Lumon's good graces. We've already seen it happen once, right?
Yeah. I mean, what was interesting though is that she did not know that Harmony had been fired.
True.
I found that really interesting because we thought that she must still have somebody on the inside, but she's not up to date with the transition in power there either. So that was interesting. I was like, oh, I would have thought that she knows this.
Huh. Now I'm wondering, I'm like, is there a way she would have known through Mark?
Well, they clearly didn't talk about it because she said she runs the seventh floor, and Devin was like, no, she doesn't, not no more.
That's true. That's true.
So she doesn't know. That's what I'm saying. I was like, I thought she still had someone to get that information for her, but she clearly doesn't.
So clearly she doesn't. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Interesting. But yeah, I think she, if nothing else, knows the type of person that Harmony is.
Yeah.
And would not entrust her to in any way do the right thing, quote unquote, if it goes against Lumon, Kier, etc. Like we said, or like you said, she doesn't know clearly that she's on the run. She didn't know that she wasn't running the severed floor, but I think she knows enough about Harmony to who knows? Maybe Harmony has been responsible for finding some of these people who have, turned in Lumon for different things and been the one to set the dogs on them. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like you said, whatever it was enough to freak her out and be like, you ain't about to catch me sleeping in the basement.
Said, no. And you could see her making that decision right away. It was like shock. It was like that fight or flight. What am I going to do? Fight, flight, or freeze, right? She froze for a second. And she's like looking at her stuff and like, nope,
time to go.
Put this back in here. I was unpacking it to do stuff, but we putting this back. It's time to go.
And she even teared up too when she was like talking about her. So there's emotional distress there. I don't know. Maybe Harmony tormented her at some point while she was working there. Who knows?
Who knows? Yeah. And she also teared up when she looked at Mark when she was like, no, I'm not making this decision. You're making this decision by calling her. Like, she's like, again, we don't know what the long intention is, but she definitely is emotionally invested in seeing this reintegration through and getting Gemma out.
Okay. I'm having a bunch of thoughts, but we're gonna keep going.
Chikhai Bardo.
Chikhai Bardo. Chikhai Bardo. Let me jump back a little bit. This wasn't in the notes, but I thought a bit about it when you were doing the summary. Why was Milchick so distressed about these cards getting out enough to warrant this OTC if this is all they're using them for? Random surveys.
Yeah.
Like, why were you made it seem like these cards were the secret to like some Lumon underhanded something?
Random surveys, plural, or just a false pretense again to test Gemma specifically, right?
I mean, yes, but again, from just the observer, it's just a card with a survey. How are they going to know what it could mean, or, I just don't see why that was worth doing an OTC to get this card back.
Oh, well, yeah, that's true. And I said that when we did that
I
episode
know.
where I was like, it didn't warrant what you did even then. Now even more so. It's more confusing. Yeah.
I just was like, this is what these cards were going out for. This is what you did in OTC and started all this ruckus for.
Oh, it was I hope you noticed it, but I immediately thought of you and the desk, because when she was explaining, she was like, I don't know, it's one of those things where you have to like draw the rabbit or the duck. And I was like, the rabbit and the duck.
As soon as she said that, I was like, I'm so glad I knew what that was before this happened.
I'm like, okay, now for sure we know that
is what it is.
That listener, not sure mom was correct. It came
so
back
glad they filled me in. Thank you for filling me in. Because when I heard that, I was like, yeah, the rabbit and the duck.
The rabbit and the duck. Yeah, and it makes me wonder if she's also gotten things like, the Rorschach test sent in the mail, and
clearly they've been
kind of psychological evaluations.
I had the thought of like, you already think that you're on a mailing list from the fertility clinic. Why would they send this to you? When you said that, I was like, okay, if it were a psychological assessment, like post-fertility treatments, we just want to kind of gauge where you're at. Please fill this out. But I looked at this thing, and the very top of that paper says, like, you could win a prize. Thing now.
I didn't think it was mailing lists from the fertility clinic in that it was specifically related to her care. I thought it was just, I got on a survey list there. It was just like, like, how, different like studies may pull participants from the doctor's office or pull them from college campuses. And
but why would a mailing list from a clinic be sending you win a prize surveys?
Because if it's a study, yeah.
I guess what I'm saying is, are they presenting it to her as this is for psychological research, or are they presenting it to her as this is just a thing you can do to win a prize and get some money?
I think she's just filling it out as an escape, right? Because she says, it's just fun. Well, it was fun until you ruined it, questioning me, right? So I think the reason they're lucky in this way. I think the reason at this moment in her life doesn't really matter. She's not doing it for the money or for the research. She's just
looking for an escape. Okay.
Yeah.
I guess it's one of those things where I'm like, I don't want clinics giving out my information. Why are they giving out my information? That's me, but I'm not in an altered state where I'm just like whatever about things. So
right.
But did you notice, as I did, at the end of this scene, once they established that, we're going to stop trying, that the flower image they showed was thistles. And I was just like, that's sad.
It was thistles, and then it shriveled up, right?
Mm-hmm.
As the transition to what's coming next. Yeah.
It's like, geez, okay. We had vibrant, life-giving flowers of various colors, and now we've got thistles in black and white. It's like drying up in the sun. I was like, oh, okay, we get it, guys. Drilling it in.
Yeah. But back to the mailing list thing, though. She does mention, I think I got on this mailing list, like they just did it, but like, we know, with HIPAA, they couldn't have. She had to have consented to be on the list at the clinic.
Okay.
So maybe it's like a form when she's filling out the paperwork.
And she said it's okay to share.
It's okay to share my info.
I think that's why it weirded me out, because I was like, how can they just be giving out your information? I'd find that very sus.
Because they cannot legally.
Okay.
But
that at least gives me a little more clarity about that. Because I was like, I would have been calling the clinic like, hey, don't get my information out. I don't want these emails.
Give me all that clinic money.
Clinic money.
This violates HIPAA. Okay. Yeah, that's it for that. That just popped into my head. I was like, wait, before we move on, you were right. This is sus.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. Okay, next section, guys. So we then transition to see present day Gemma waking up and doing her morning routine with all her Lumon toiletries in the bathroom. She gets dressed. We see her transform into yet another version of some other innie. And this time the innie is stuck on an extremely turbulent flight. She does have another kind of 80s aesthetic to her too, like the wig and it looks very like 80s airline, but she is on a turbulent flight. We've got the dentist guy in there again as a flight attendant, rolling a cart back and forth during this turbulence. So he's trying to comically deliver her an in-flight meal while all this is happening. Next, we go from there to Gemma back in her quarters. She's doing yoga and she's being surveilled yet again by the watchers. And the screen cuts from watching her to watching Mark's current status as he is working the Cold Harbor file. They show some different intercutting, but it lands on this final frame where Drummond states that he is stuck at 96%. And we hear him also mention that the nosebleed has set them back. And he reminds the dentist that when Mark completes the file, he will have to say goodbye to her being Gemma. As they speak, we see Gemma sit down for a meal that she has made from freeze-dried food items packaged in the shape of the Lumon water drop in a nice little organized drawer. And we cut back to Mr. Drummond asking the dentist why he's wearing this stupid Christmas sweater. And we will soon see why. Back in Gemma's quarters, she is dressed as a 50s housewife, puts on a wedding band, and is walked by the nurse yet again to another room. And we overhear her writing a thank you note. This time we see, once we get inside, that her innie is trapped in a perpetual post-Christmas malaise. And she is spending all her time writing thank you cards with her non-dominant hand until it feels like it's going to fall off. The dentist is playing her husband now, and he seems to enjoy it a little too much. He tells her he loves her as she's about to leave. She tries to walk past him, and then he says, I love you. And she gives him a look and just kind of a weird smirk and says, I love you too. And he allows her to go. Once she gets outside, the nurse walks Gemma back to her quarters, where she shakes her left hand as it is in a great deal of pain.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the question you answered for me was, why is her handwriting so bad?
Yeah.
Because she was writing with her non-dominant hand. Okay.
Yeah, I think they make a specific point to show in the fertility clinic and in this survey scene right before that she is writing with her right hand.
Okay. Okay. I didn't pay that much attention. Should have caught that. But yeah, I did notice that. I was like, why is her handwriting so terrible? I thought it had to do with something else entirely, but I'm going to throw that theory out of my brain.
Okay.
Okay. So let's see. Where do we want to jump back to?
The beginning, the plane flight is hilarious. Oh my God. It's terrible because, like, again, why are you torturing her in every which way you can think of? But
it looks like something out of a sitcom. It doesn't. So funny. And the thing that makes it so upsetting to me is that I was like, this is all unrealistic. There's nobody else on this plane.
There's nobody.
There's one flight attendant. If you had turbulence that bad, he would not be trying to roll a cart full of food in the middle of the bad turbulence, flying this way and
he's like, this is normal. Sets the tray down and then flies up and hits the ceiling. And then it's like, okay, so do some of these rooms have like motion? They're like set up like those motion rides where the floor and everything moves. Because like, what? How are they simulating this to her right now on the testing floor?
Callie?
What?
Callie?
Uh-oh.
Do you know what this is confirming to me?
What?
This is confirming to me that Woe's Hollow and that whole situation for sure is a space in Lumon that they have generated.
Yeah, they definitely have the ability.
Because if each of these small little rooms are recreating all these other scenarios, they definitely controlled that situation. 100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
If there was any question, this should, I think, answer it for anybody.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed.
But yeah, that thing was so comically ridiculous. I was just like, well, as actors, I hope they had a fun time doing this.
Oh, it was great.
But as characters, I'm just so mad she's severed, because she should know that this is not a real scenario. This is not a real situation.
Right. What is this? I'm curious.
When does it end?
Start and stop of this, right? Because like the dentist one is very clear cut, beginning and end. You have your dental cleaning and then you're done, right? But how does it start and stop? Like, I wonder if they take her through the whole like boarding process, or like, does she open up just entering the plane cabin? Like, I'm curious.
I was wondering that too.
Do we get a safe landing? And then she gets
What if they just throw her out the emergency exit and that's her going back?
That's her going back as an outie. That's terrible. It's terrible. It's so funny. Oh my God.
They put a parachute on her and say, good luck. And she goes back out into the hall.
She's like, what are they doing to me in these rooms? There's a parachute. Oh my, what?
Oh, the nurse just takes it like, I'll take that for you, honey.
That is fantastic.
That's headcanon for me now. That's how it ends. So going from there, we go back to her in her quarters. We see everything's very neatly arranged. Mm-hmm. I noticed when she was making her bed, I was like, this feels like prison. I mean, it is prison, but like the way she has to make her bed, even like the drawings that were on the wall, I was like, this looks like prison.
And what I found really interesting about that part is that the things on the bed were all in packages. Like she gets a new set of everything each day too. So it makes me wonder if that's just all more testing. Like, take your towel because we're going to test the skin cells on it. We're going to take this. And she gets a sterile, clean new one, because a lot of those things on her bed that she placed on her bed was in plastic.
Oh, that's awful. Okay. But that's probably what they're doing. You're right. That's probably what they're doing. Getting hair from her brush and who knows what.
Yep.
Ugh, awful. So the food. Here we go again. Weird Lumon food.
Yeah, I knew as soon as the drawer opened, I was like, I don't have to worry about the screenshots because Rodnesha's gonna
Oh,
grab them.
I noted. Pew. Um,
Yeah, what are all the food
I
items?
mean, I didn't write down all of them
Okay,
only because of time. I would have if I could. The ones that I wrote down were the ones that she selected.
yeah, okay.
She pulled out a crispy
Mhm.
chip wheel, which I think are the little things that
Which
she
is
fried up and put
we
on top.
see her fry it up
Mhm.
later. Yeah.
She had some macerated kale. And then the other two, I couldn't tell what they were because I'd have to find them somewhere in the drawer. If you zoom, let me see if I can zoom in. I was like, if you zoom in on that image, I think you can see what some of the items are. Let me see if I can pull them up right now. So we have macerated kale. We have something bison,
Okay, more meat.
rendered marrow,
Oh yes, I did see that the marrow.
something beef, liver pate, garden snap peas. I noticed that it looked like most of the items she grabbed might have been vegetarian items. So I was like, is
Hmm.
Gemma a vegetarian? I don't
Oh
know.
yeah.
All the things on the far right side that are
Oh
in this package, those are all like little
oh, like garnishes and stuff.
thank you.
The things
Because
she put on top. Yeah.
one says chives. We already saw the crispy chip wheel. I think one says parsley. Apple blossom is one of them.
But what is interesting, and it doesn't come in this scene, is later she has a regular old key lime pie slice. So I'm like, where
Thank
did
you.
that
I
come
saw that
from?
too. And I was like, so she gets pie? I was so confused.
Everything else has got to be like a mushy teardrop thing,
But then she gets a
but
nice slice of
she
pie.
gets some nice dessert.
Okay, so enough with the weird jets and food. Did you have anything else to say before we head to Christmas Town?
No.
Now, here's what I was alluding to early on is that clearly this room is actually rooted in a real memory, right? We see later on that this was a real experience she had with Mark. And I find it interesting that they make her married in this scenario. They make her put on the wedding ring, right? Because in the
Mhm.
other ones, I don't know if they do or don't. It didn't seem like they really narrowed in on that. Obviously, this is a very distorted version of that memory that she has later. And I'll get to it when we get to the little montage. But once I saw that montage later, I reflected back on this scene and I was like, do they have a way of data mining her actual memories to recreate them? Is that part of the numbering thing? How would they be able to recreate this so specifically?
Yeah, I'm a little confused because I know Christmas comes up in that montage, and I just thought maybe that's a sign of like something going through and it triggers a Christmas memory at that next point. But I didn't take this as being specific to something that actually happened to her.
Well, it's because one, they make the tree look very similar, including the tree ornaments
Hmm.
to what she has, her and Mark have on their tree in their actual house.
Okay.
The fact that she's married, and then the I love you thing was also what Mark
Yeah,
did
the
to
I
her.
love yeah, the I
So I
love
was
you
like, so
part.
they're
Yeah.
recreating
Okay.
this moment.
I think I thought you meant like the moment of her being
Oh, no, no, no.
abused, verbally abused
Oh,
and
no, no,
told
no, no.
to. Yeah, I was like, what are you
No, no, no,
talking
no.
about? The thank you cards. Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
like the scenery. And
Just
yeah,
this
the I love you
the
is
scenery, the I love you, but then they're adding the torture element with the
yeah.
Christmas cards. But I just was
Okay,
trying to
yeah.
figure out how they even knew that this was a real thing that happened.
Because they've been watching them forever.
But have they been watching or were they able to data mine her? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Like, did they have setups in
Yeah.
her home to see it? Or are they able to actually retrieve memories from her and be able to visualize them somehow?
I think either is possible, and I think it's probably a little bit of both, to
Mm,
be honest.
mm,
Just
uh,
because again, she's clearly being watched outside of their home in different ways. So I wouldn't, it's not like shocking to think maybe they had a way to see inside their home too. But then also we keep learning more and more things about what this chip can do. So maybe
Did you watch Black Mirror at all?
some of it.
There was an episode of Black Mirror where there was like a chip implant thing that people had to store memories on. So they didn't have to like have them in their head. They could recall them from this chip, but
Oh
it
yeah.
visualized it so that you could actually watch and see and replay
Yeah.
what was
Yeah.
happening. That's what it made me think was like, can the chip do that?
Yeah.
Who knows? But what we do know is clearly where all the stuff OND is making is going into these rooms. Oh, I hated this. I hated this for her.
Yeah.
And this is where I thought, again, if the rooms are tempers, this is clearly the malice room or one of the malice rooms because this
Mhm.
woman hates this man. Her Innie hates this man.
And to go back to your question earlier, which Innie tried to break his finger? Probably this one.
This one, you're
She's
right.
clearly
You're
being
right.
abused by her husband in this scenario.
Yeah.
And the way, he stops her with the I love you at the end, and just, again, the growing fondness that we're seeing across these rooms as more time goes by is It's really making me fear that the dentist has done some other things to Gemma in these
I don't
rooms,
I don't want to believe that because that's awful.
especially something he state to her later on.
I know.
It's feeling
I
very.
had the thought, much like you, but then I was
Mhm.
like, I don't want that to be true because if so, that makes
Yes.
this so much more malicious than it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
But at the same time, as we have talked about in previous episodes of why we would never get severed,
Yep.
it is entirely possible that that
Mm-hmm.
could very well be happening.
Mm-hmm.
And if so,
Yeah.
that man better
Yeah.
hope he never leaves the severed floor or the testing floor. Question: do you think that the nurse, so I thought this earlier because I was trying to figure out what her deal is. Do
Yeah.
we think that she's severed? If not, do we think that she is one of the live-in people that never leave Lumen? Because Homegirl is there, we see throughout the day, and then later on, we see she's there at night.
Yeah, I wonder. I don't know. Yeah, I didn't put any thought to whether or not she's severed, but it would make sense if she is one of those people that never gets to leave. I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah.
why don't they have shifts?
And then the fact that she has to continually get punctured for the rooms to access them.
Oh yeah, I forgot to bring that up
Mm-hmm.
too. I was like, okay, each door has got to puncture a different
A
finger,
different
a different
finger.
part of her hand because there ain't no way she
The
could do
same
that
finger get, no, I thought
six
the same thing.
same 6 times a day at minimum. Because sometimes maybe sometimes she's going to more rooms than that.
Mm-hmm.
What? I know. Oh, her finger would be destroyed, or maybe some of them are
You're
also
absolutely
the other
right.
hand too.
Oof. There'd have to be a trade-off because,
Rotating.
like you said, her fingers
Yeah,
would be bruised as all get out and probably
yeah.
eventually coagulate like in those spots to where it's harder
Right.
to
It'd
get.
be like scar tissue and wouldn't be able to get that.
Ugh, that's terrible.
Yeah.
That's why I was like, maybe she's an innie and they don't care that her finger gets pricked like 10,000 times because they don't care about these innies. They're like,
Right.
whatever.
It's almost like any Inception into where it's like, okay, if Gemma slash Miss Casey is this important and they're doing this stuff to her and she never actually leaves Lumen, so she spends most of her time on the testing floor. If this lady is also someone who never leaves, is there another place that she goes at some point when she's not needed on the testing floor? Like, you know what I mean? Is it like levels to it? Because if she has a semi authority role in relation to Gemma, like, you know what I mean?
Yes. Who knows? The answer is who knows? Maybe she's got a little back office like Milchick does where she just sleeps in there until they need her and she pops out. Who knows?
She just in the testing floor on call room.
Maybe if she's lucky, they send a doctor down that she can diddle in the on-call room like on Grace.
Ah!
Okay.
Anything
That's
else
all I
about
got.
this section?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so we're almost there. We got like two more big sections. So
Whoop.
okay. Back in Gemma's room, Billie Holiday's I'll Be Seeing You is playing on the wall unit. And this then takes us to a memory of Mark angrily, sadly, taking apart the unused baby crib while Gemma listens to his frustration from the hallway. And then as that song continues to play, we see them comfort each other. And it's also, like you mentioned, it's also Christmas time in this memory. And then we come back to present day Gemma in her room. And as she's eating dessert, that key lime pie, the dentist comes to check on her. And we finally learn that his name is Dr. Maurer when Gemma greets him. And Gemma lets him know that her hand hurts and says that it's from whatever happened to her in the Allentown room. And then she tells Dr. Maurer that she wants to go home. And he turns off her music and tells Gemma that her husband remarried and now has a daughter. And Gemma does not believe that. And so when she tells him that she doesn't believe him, he tells her that Mark has moved on and perhaps she has too in one of the rooms. And he goes on to monologue her a little bit and perhaps, have you found yourself gravitating to any one of the rooms? And perhaps you have felt things in one of the rooms that you haven't felt with Mark. Perhaps I've seen it. Ugh, so creepy. And as he's speaking, he walks off to the bookshelf in her room and he picks up one of the books, and it's The Death of Ivan Ilyich by Leo Tolstoy, which happens to be the paper that she was grading when she first met Mark was written about.
Mm-hmm.
And Gemma suddenly appears behind him with a chair and knocks this sucker unconscious. And then she takes his key card and she escapes to the hallway. And as she's making her way towards the black elevator, she sees the path ahead of her start to light up. And that's a sign that someone is coming from that direction. So she books it the other way and she hides in one of the little room inlets. And then we see the nurse comes out of one of the hallways and is on the hunt for her. And when Gemma sees her chance, she runs towards the elevator and the nurse hears her, takes chase, calls after her, but Gemma makes it to the elevator in time to go up without being caught. And then we hear that familiar ding again. Well, first off, the Billie Holiday song being a song that clearly she and Mark both enjoy because we heard Mark listening to this in season one when we got the Gemma reveal as Miss Casey, right? And then also the familiar book on the bookshelf made me think, okay, they're clearly not trying to indoctrinate Gemma the way that they do with all their other employees, both severed and unsevered alike, right? Because they clearly control and try to teach their unsevered employees the same things they're trying to teach the innies, and they have to really believe it to be able to work there anyway.
Right.
Because they're letting her keep all these familiar non-lumen comforts that are not allowed on the severed floor, right? And when you brought up the flowers, that made me think like contributing to that. So are they letting her try to have pieces of comfort within this? They're like, here's some actual pie. She must like key lime pie, rather than our teardrop food. And here's favorite flower. And here's your books that you've reread a bunch of times. Here's your favorite music, So a little bit of something so she doesn't go crazy.
That makes me think there must be some element to why they want her to retain the integrity of her original self. Like they must be really trying to reinforce, like, we don't want her to lose her original self in all of this. So we need to like reinforce that by having these other things present. How that contributes or why, I don't know. But I had that thought too, was like, okay, there must be some importance to making sure that she doesn't lose track of her self as is. Like it needs to be weighted against these other personalities.
And that's a good point, because that was a big why question for me throughout this whole episode, because, I had brought up in a previous episode that, I thought that, okay, they're keeping her somewhere, but they are lying to her if they bring her outie out, right? And they have to have some elaborate story of her being very sick or whatever, some reason for her to be in a hospital situation and telling her that she's going in and out of a coma, and that explains her lost time when she's in Innie. And they have made up some excuse for why none of her loved ones are visiting her. But she knows that she is trapped and kidnapped. But there's no story or pretense around her being her outie self down here. And I also was like, oh, it hasn't been a long time since her last consciousness. They wake her up every damn day.
I had that thought because we were guessing about that last episode. And in the previous scene when she's talking to the doctor and she says, so I can see Mark, that's when I was like, oh crap, she does have awareness. Because at first it was kind of unclear what she might have known beyond the testing floor. Like clearly she knows she has to go through this routine every day, but it wasn't clear if she had any awareness of her previous life or her outside self or what have you. And then when she said that, I was just like, oh no. So she's very aware of the time passing. She's very aware of what she's missing out on, what she's lost. And that's even sadder in a way because shoot, she's had to be conscious of this the whole time. Just about. Boo hiss. All right. I didn't have much else for...
You have a note about the escape.
Okay, that's true. It was just the fact that I noticed that when she does escape and she makes her run down the halls, that it had the same freneticness that Mark's run in the very opening scene of episode 1 of this season did. So it's, again, just kind of that parallel between her and him, like these similar threads and veins running through the two of them in their narrative. I just found it interesting that they wanted to bring that similar shot back to show there's a same desperation to get to one another. Like he was trying to get to Miss Casey in that scene. She's trying to get up to him. So when she ran to the elevator, I was like, no, Gemma, you're Miss Casey when you go up that elevator. Why do you think this is going to work? Have you ever woken up on the other end of that elevator? No, you have not. What do you do? Oh, no. And this is where what I was getting at earlier is that, there's no way for her to coordinate her effort with Miss Casey. Because let's say, getting ahead of myself, let's say Mr. Milchek didn't stop Miss Casey. Miss Casey would probably just wander around until she found somebody, but she wouldn't be trying to leave. No.
She has no reason to try, maybe, I don't know. And she also has never been, I was like, would Miss Casey, because she has been trapped there, try to leave? But she wouldn't even know her only exit. She thinks where she came from is the exit.
That's true. So the thing that was most interesting to me about this whole thing, because as soon as she tried to escape, I was like, well, this is going nowhere, because we already know what happens when she gets on the elevator. But I'm wondering if she was just so hopeful that like her determination would maybe give some kind of inclination to whoever's on the other side of this elevator to maybe carry it somewhere, right? She doesn't know that Miss Casey has any relationship to a Mark that she knows, but Miss Casey does know that there is something clearly that draws her to Mark in particular, which is why she asked about him before she left the last time we saw her go down the elevator.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll get into the next section, but I think it kind of
Yeah.
informs that as well. So I don't know what her hope was. I don't know if maybe she just
Yeah.
thought maybe because of the time of day that she was going up, maybe she was like, well, I'm not going up during the day when Miss Casey
Yeah,
would
when I
usually
normally
go.
do.
So maybe nobody's there and I can just keep going, maybe.
Yeah.
But I mean, clearly it was a desperate attempt. It wasn't thought all the way through, but desperate times
Yeah.
call for desperate actions. So
Yeah, maybe. As you say that, it reminds me of when Helly ran from the perpetuity wing and we're like, okay, girl, we know what you're trying to do, kind of, but you clearly don't have a full plan. You have just a tiny bit of a plan.
I have
Right?
concepts of a plan.
Concepts of a plan, right? Because like what were you about to do once you got to that door, right? It's like, Gemma, what were you about to do once you got to that elevator?
Gosh. Okay, let's just get into the next section because that's
Okay,
where
it's the last piece. Here we go.
All right, here we go. So after that escape attempt, we jump back to the past again, where Mark is working in his study and Gemma is heading out the house. She confirms that Mark is really going to stay in because I think she was hoping he'd go with her, but he says that he's busy and got to get this work done. So she heads off by herself, not without making sure to say, I love you, and making sure that he says it back. We hear the elevator ding and are back in the exports hallway. Gemma's demeanor is familiar as she walks down the hallway towards the door, and Mr. Milchick walks in from the other side and confirms that she is again Miss Casey. So Miss Casey is very confused, doesn't know why she's up there. And Mr. Milchick makes up a story that her Audi was at Lumon on the upper floors for some art exhibition and got into the wrong elevator accidentally. Whoops. And Miss Casey asks, well, how long has it been since she was last out? But Milchick just sideswipes that and is like, you know what? We just need to get you back on the elevator so your Audi can go enjoy her time. As she walks back, she begins to ask another question, which is, where's ... But Milchick cuts her off yet again. Milchick exits and closes the door behind him, taking us back to the past where Mark is working the night away in his study. He hears a car and sees some headlights outside of his window, and we're pretty sure we know what's going on, but a car is pulling into his driveway, which he finds a little strange. He begins to walk to his front door, and then we jump back and forth between present-day Gemma and past Mark. So Gemma arrives back down on the testing floor and is heartbroken that her escape attempt failed. Mark walks towards the front of his door, and there's a window where he can see two police officers walking up towards the home. We go back to Gemma, who looks at the nurse as the elevator doors part. And as Gemma walks backwards, defeated by her fate, we then jump again to Mark, who is walking backwards as he realizes that the police presence can only mean one thing. We jump back to Gemma, and we see the nurse who is beginning to walk in towards her. And poor Gemma's just a mess on the floor, but she finally gets her up and they start walking back down the halls. We make one last cut to Mark, who is frozen in his hallway as we cut to black. Just kidding. False ending. You know how they do. So we get one more scene before we're out. And we're back in the present day with Mark because we still need to make sure he's okay, right? So we see Mark beginning to open his eyes, they're fluttering, and he finds Devin at his side. He looks around, confused, begins to sit up, very disoriented. Devin looks so relieved. And then the first thing she asks is, Mark, where did you go? And then we get a memory flash of Gemma walking through the library, and Mark starts to tear up, but then he has a faint smile on his face as he remembers Gemma's eyes, and we see those in close up. And now it's over for real.
Oh, I know we have to go back and go in order, but the ending.
I know.
I just cry. When Mark cries, I cry. So far, when Mark cries, I cry. Oh, that broke me. Okay, back.
Let me go back. Let's go back. Okay. So it's just wild because we know where this story goes. We know where this journey is headed. We know ultimately these two are parted by unforeseen circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
And we finally land at this moment where it's like, this is going to be the last time that Gemma sees Mark and Mark sees Gemma before all this crazy Lumon nonsense enters the picture.
Wow.
And it's very sad. And especially since it's one of those like everyday moments, right? Where you don't think it's going to be the last time you see your partner, right? And he's just working and doing what he normally does. And Gemma's going to go out and I'm not going to go with you this time. I got to finish this thing, right?
Yeah.
And then it's even more bittersweet that like Gemma ensures that he says, I love you before he leaves again. Because he's probably like, yeah, of course, I love you. Yes, yeah, gotta work, and at least he can say that's the last thing I said to my wife, because that's not always the case for everybody, right? When Gemma is delivered back down, I think here is where I noted that I was mad at myself. and it's not anything legitimate. I'm just mad at myself because I had such a busy day, week leading into that day, that I didn't watch the show until super late. And I was very
Mm-hmm.
tired. I was paying attention, but like my brain had already somewhat checked out for the night.
Okay.
And so I feel like that moment didn't land the way I wanted it to land because I was
Oh,
just so tired. I was so
oh,
tired.
because it hit
And it
me.
did not,
Oh,
I didn't get emotional. I didn't cry. I should have. In any other circumstance, I probably would have.
yeah.
But I just was like, okay, I got to go to bed. Like, that's all I could think.
Yeah.
So when I went back and watched it again the next day, I mean, I still wasn't as fully present, but I was just like, oh, this is a really sad scene. I'm surprised I didn't cry. And I was like, because I was so tired that I probably just couldn't even process emotion at that point because it was really heartbreaking to see on both actors' parts. And so I was just mad at myself that I didn't give
Hmm.
it the full opportunity to land with weight the way I feel
Yeah.
like it should have.
Yeah, because it read with a little tiny bit of a smile. It was almost like, oh man, I was just so happy
I didn't even
because
catch that part,
I
by the
was
way, until
back.
you wrote it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he was back with her. He was back in it and now he's just lost it again by
Mm-hmm.
waking up.
Mm-hmm. Which
Oh,
was sad. When I read that and I was like, oh, I
oh,
didn't catch that the first time. And then when I watched it again, I was like, oh, okay, that's really it's like waking up from a
oh,
really good dream, right?
yeah.
And then you're like, no, it's
Yeah.
over.
Oh,
No, I
it's
don't want it to be
over.
over.
Oh, heartbreaking. Oh my gosh. I don't have anything else specific about
Okay.
just this last scene.
The only thing I wanted to point out, which I left the image notes for,
Oh, yes, yes,
one,
yes.
I'll jump to the last shot. The final shot, I just loved the composition of the shot where you see
Mhm.
Mark's head looking out towards the police as they approach. And then they have the transition fade from his to Gemma being walked back down the halls.
Yeah.
And it's literally like the echo of her lives inside of him
It-
still.
yeah.
And even just again, like the shot we saw in the title sequence, right? Of like something
Yeah.
coming out of the back of his head. It's like these things are living inside of him, even if he isn't quite aware. That
Yeah.
echo of a presence is always going to be there
Mhm.
no matter what. So it's just pointing back to the whole love transcending severance, right? Like this person is a part of my being. So no matter what, there's always going to be something that beacon calls to them and vice versa. I just thought it was a beautiful
Yeah.
shot and a haunting shot.
Yeah.
The other shot that I put up here in the doc was during the montage flashes that were happening and the scenes were kind of going in and out.
Hmm.
I just found this one interesting because it's clearly the woods and it's clearly a searchlight. So this is making me think because there's always been the question of like, how did Gemma get to Lumon?
Hmm.
What really happened? Was it staged? Was she snatched? Da, da, da. I'm starting to think she really did have the accident.
Yeah.
And Lumon just was there to retrieve her when it happened. Now, how they body swapped
Yeah.
her and all that stuff, I don't know. But this scene makes me think, oh, she really did have the accident, but someone else found her before.
They came and got her before any rescue
Because that definitely
was
looks like a
made.
searchlight of someone who you would think is coming to rescue you, but then it's probably Lumon there
Right.
to do the body snatching. And that's probably the last she saw of the outside world before being thrown down to the testing floor. So what I don't know
Yeah.
is like, was she conscious or unconscious, or did she actually drown to some degree and they were able to revive her?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have anything else to say before I jump into theories?
No, I just had an overall just like praise for Deech and Lockman.
Okay. I'll do theories and then I want to jump in with you on
Yeah.
that. So, all right.
Okay.
First theory. The drowning actually happened.
Hmm.
The severance chip was implanted, and that's the only thing that's keeping her conscious mind present. I think she probably did die, and the chip saved her. And I'm wondering if part of the multiple personas thing, I'm wondering if what they're trying to test for or trying to do with the chip potentially has to do with being able to combat trauma by segmenting off those parts of the brain. So maybe they're undergoing all these trauma duress tests to say, can this chip block out woe moments,
Hmm.
overly bad frolic moments, dread, malice? Can it push all those back, even in the most extreme and duressful moments, so that the person is unbothered by trauma, essentially, and can go
Yeah.
through their life never having to experience the residual effects of those traumatic moments, right? And I say that because he also, when he said like, Kier will heal Mark the way he's healed you, I think maybe they
Yeah.
think that's what this chip is doing, or this version of the chip.
Yeah. I definitely think that that is what they're testing to see if like all that trauma will push through.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so flawed because they are not accounting for the trauma that they're putting her outie through. right? Her main personality is going through trauma by being trapped here.
Of course.
You
Of
giving
course.
her some cake every once in a while, and her books that
We
she
gave you
like is not
pie. We gave
doing
you
that.
pie.
Right, right. It's so I agree that
Pie and
that's
records.
probably what they're testing, but it's so flawed. It's so
Yeah.
flawed. Their baseline is not a true baseline because they're not
No.
letting her live
Her
her
live her
regular
life.
life.
Agree. So that's one aspect of it. The other thing I'm wondering is, so I know there's been theories about like, oh, they're probably going to use Miss Casey to do this or do that or bring back here or whatever. And clearly they're planning on just being done with her once this testing is over. What I'm wondering is it Mark they're actually planning to put Kier into if they find some way to perfect this chip and make it so that probably Kier can have the perfect body to embody, if that makes sense. I'm wondering if it's more about Mark being prepped for this than it is about Gemma, because clearly Gemma is just a means to an end to prep Mark with all these little testings of the chip and perfecting the chip and da da da, if that's what they're doing. So I'm wondering if maybe Mark is the end game and not the means to the end for the eventual resurrection of Kier.
Interesting. Yeah. See, I didn't know. I don't know because I thought was Mark was the important one leading up to this, and then this episode made me think the reverse of that. Like Mark is just they only need Mark because something about him being connected to her. They need him to prepare the specific tests for her. Still, so we still don't know why Cold Harbor is so important, but yeah, I'm not sure.
I
I'm not
don't know.
sure because I also still am not 100% sure that his consciousness hasn't already been like transferred from like person to person. Like, I
I
don't
think
know.
it's possible that it has, but I think maybe they're waiting for this technology so that he can live free without the burdens of whatever body he has to inhabit.
Mm.
And I'm also thinking about that scene in the opening title sequence because everybody thinks that the moment with the Cure baby looking up at Mark is about Mark and Helly siring a child.
No.
But when
Yeah.
it had something to do with the moment where the dentist, Dr. Maurer guy, is talking to her about the world that she will sire, and that Mark will be there or Mark's going to live in or whatever he said.
Mark's going to benefit from the world that you sire.
There it is. So that just made me think like, is Mark going to be Mark? Or does it mean like Mark will be able to benefit from this chip that can rid him of trauma? Or Mark will now be the ideal vessel for a Cure resurrection? Because I'm like, maybe the baby is looking up at Mark like, I'm coming for you.
Yeah, you're the body that I want.
You're next.
Give me that body.
Yeah, I want that body. So I don't know. It just had me thinking on different cylinders about like, we've been looking in this direction, but maybe it's actually pivoting a different way. I don't know. Might not be. But as we've noted in other episodes, there's so much emphasis on Mark. And yes, some of it could be because of his tie to Miss Casey, but what if it isn't just his tie to Miss Casey? Like maybe Miss Casey was the means to an end to him versus whatever she could contribute. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see. I think that was
I
it.
want more information too about how he came to Lumon. Like we know the why, right? But it makes me wonder specifically, like, was he pushed there? How was he pushed there by Lumon?
Well, we know from the other things we've seen, sources like there's always some little Lumon advert or something that pops up.
That's what I'm thinking. So I'm like, was something specifically shown to him? Were they given subliminal messaging? Because none of this works if Mark doesn't go to work at Lumon.
Very true. Maybe we'll get that flashback later. We got 3 episodes left. All right, go on. Deechin.
Wow. Deechin Lockman. Oh my goodness.
Mm-hmm.
She had so much work to do in this episode, right? Because she had to build this full, complete character and make us love her with no time, right? With nothing. All the other characters are leaps and bounds ahead of her in the amount of time that we have had to see them grow. And we got so much. Oh, we got so much. We know so much about her personality and who the person she is and what she stands for. And obviously it's in the writing, but my gosh, she did so beautifully. Oh, this episode is all her. If she don't get an individual Emmy, for this specific, like, my God, it's Emmy worthy. And oh my gosh, it was so good.
Yeah, she's amazing. This episode was amazing. It makes it worth not having seen her for really seen her for 5 episodes of this season, right? We've been flirted with it. She's popped up in little flashy bits, but they saved all of that for this one very tremendous effort that she gave. And boy, oh boy, did you fall in love with her? Did you feel for her? Did you rage with her? Like,
yes,
all these undercurrents of just like angst and disenchantment, but also like this determination to like, I'm not going to die here. I'm not going to rot here. Well, bravo, Deech and Lockman. I've seen her
Chef's
page
kiss.
getting lit up by people that are like, this was
gosh.
amazing. So well deserved.
Amazing.
Well deserved. All right. Well, guys, that's episode 7. Chikhai Bardo.
Why are you saying it like a...
I don't know.
That's your Texans coming out.
Chikhai.
Anyway, as always, we invite you to join the conversation. Please follow us on social media and contact us if you have any questions, musings, anything you want to discuss with us. We are on Threads, Blue Sky, TikTok, Instagram, and Lemonade at the UUR Pod. And you can also email us at the UURpod@gmail.com. Also, we do have a Patreon. If you would like to support us there, you can become a free member or a paid member and support our efforts. We put up extended cuts of the video episodes, early access to episodes. We put extra bonus content on there, behind the scenes stuff. Yeah, and we're building more and more what will be there each day. And as always, please rate, review, and subscribe on whatever pod listening app you use. We greatly appreciate it.
We do indeed. Thank you to those of you who have joined our Patreon. We see you. We appreciate you. Tell a friend. And we're grateful once again to you guys who have been following us more and more. It's been such a blast. We are at the home stretch of this journey, guys.
Oh my God.
We're ready to rock it out with you. We're so ready to see where this journey lands. Okay, well, with that said, we will see you next week for episode 8, which is
Sweet Vitriol. Which, by the way, the description only says something like discoveries are made, and it's a 37-minute episode, so I'm already mad at it.
I know what it's about.
Uh-oh.
Do you want to know? I don't know what it's about, but I know who it's about.
Is it finally Harmony?
Yes.
Finally. My God, we've been guessing that it was going to be her episode back at 5.
Literally every other episode after Wosalo.
Okay. Good. I'm glad. I want Harmony's episode.
Yes, we are finally going to get that sweet, sweet Harmony co-bell. So I think it'll be a short 37 minutes, but an impactful 37 minutes. So Jesus. We will see you guys next week for that. This has been the UUR. And remember, you will see the world again, and the world will see you.